Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Welcome, Jordan Edwards, entrepreneur, podcaster, former New Jersey guy like myself. How are you today? How is the weather in beautiful Tampa, Florida?
I'm doing well, John. I'm doing well. The weather's fantastic. I'm inside, sadly, but after the podcast, I'll get outside. How are you doing, John? Thank you for having me on.
I'm good. Yeah, weather's here in Dallas is good, and I'm heading to Costa Rica on Sunday for 8 days.
Good.
I'll be at the beach too. I'm jealous. Anybody lives in Tampa, Sarasota, I'm always jealous of you guys. Not when the storms blow. Then it's like you can have it, but the rest of the time, it's like that's the greatest beaches in the world, right?
Yeah, the storms were pretty bad. The storms were a real pain for a lot of the people, just because it's traumatizing. Mother Nature, you don't know its capabilities.
Yeah, it's pretty scary sometimes. But let's talk a little bit. You coach and work with a lot of world-class achievers from some great businesses. What would be three things that you tell them to help guide the process in their thinking and maybe get their thinking right or get them over an obstacle perhaps that they have in their way?
Yeah, so the way I like to think about it and the way I kind of work with people is there's a lot of different mind tricks. There's a lot of different ways to think about things. And we even have ourselves, like yesterday, for example, I did an in-person podcast with somebody. And at that same point, I had a podcast afterwards scheduled. And the guy kept bothering me. He kept hammering me. We're going to have to change this time, change this. And you have to start to realize one of the ways, the reason I'm telling the story is because you start to sit there and think, what is the most important thing? And once you realize what that is, you have to try to put as much attention on that as you can. Because we always have 100 different responsibilities, but we sit there and we think, how do we actually focus on the most important thing? Because a lot of the times you find people focusing on these very minuscule tasks that aren't revenue generating if they're in their business. And so that's one of the tools I use. Another tool I use to keep it super simple is, what do we want to do in 5 years? And is this part of the 5-year plan? If it's not part of the 5-year plan, maybe we cut it out. Maybe we change it up. Maybe we think about it a little bit differently. And then the big third one I really recommend to a lot of people whenever they're going through challenges or thinking about things differently is try something, but start small. So start it out really small and see if it works. If it works, then put some more water on it or some more oil on the fire, like that kind of thing. And then it will really bloom, because that's how I think about it. Because we're always facing challenges. We always have a million opportunities. And it's very challenging for us to just decide on certain things. And our attention's constantly being taken from us. So it's, how do we focus on the right things at the right time?
And how do you help people to focus? Because you just said it yourself, focus on the right things and get to the right things. There's so much noise right now. You got political noise, you got tariff noise, you got stock market noise, you got noise, and the noise just changes, but there's always noise. How do you get somebody to say, hey, here's the things that I got to prioritize in my life, in my business? How do you make those priorities come to life so that less is more, where they're doing less things, but they're doing those things very well versus the things maybe that they can offload on a second in command, a partner in a business, if it's a small business, an employee, or even, AI. How do they shift their thinking so that they do what they do best and they get rid of the rest?
So the way I think about this, and this is what I tell a lot of my clients, is that we have to zoom in and zoom out. And what I mean by that is you have to sit there. Zoom in is doing the activities, right? So we're in the podcast right now. We're zoomed in. Zoom out is the call we took prior to the podcast, being like, how do we want to think about this podcast? How do we want to do this? Is this a good idea? Should we talk about this? So the zoom in, zoom out can be used in every area of our life. So the problem is that most of us are too busy with what we're doing, and we never take a moment to prioritize, hey, let's zoom out and look at this calendar and go, that's important, that's not important, that is important, that's not important. Because you could be on calls and do stuff all day long and move paper and not do anything. But once you start to realize, hey, this is a task I really, by what I'm getting at is like when you zoom out, you want to sit there and look at the activities that you're doing. One, are they best qualified for you? Two, do they give you energy or take your energy? For me, for example, I have the podcast and I record the podcast, obviously without AI yet. I can't outsource that yet, but I enjoy this activity. But the post production, I brought in a guy in on my team to do it all because I was getting frustrated with it. I was getting bogged down and it was taking a lot of my energy. So we always want to gauge things on energy, and energy, money is energy, time is energy, how we feel is energy, and we want to see what gives us the most energy and what takes our energy. And if we can get away from those taking energy activities, then it's best for us to do that. So you really want to sit there and evaluate what is moving me forward, but you can't do that without zooming in and zooming out. And
Mm.
then from there, if you make that decision, you want to set an action step and then have somebody hold you accountable to those new actions you're trying to develop.
And how do you eliminate the energy vampires?
You have to put parameters on. So what I mean by that is actually I had a client go, how can I stop people from a 30-minute phone call? I go, you got to make it 5 minutes. And he's 5 minutes. That feels offensive. And it was a group call, and we were all kind of sitting there and going like, how do you get it done in 5 minutes? And for example, what you do is someone calls you, they're trying to get some of your time. You want to be responsive, which is appropriate. So you answer, and you go, some people don't even answer the phone, but you answer and you go, hey, John, I only have 5 minutes. Like, what's up? And then if you go 6 minutes, they're grateful that you gave them the extra time. So what I mean by that is you want to set parameters. The other one I do is if someone's really not, maybe they have some aspects of life I enjoy with them, and then some aspects that are just not beneficial to me, I'll try to adjust them with that. So like I have a friend where when we go out, he goes out a little too much, you know what I mean? And it's too much of a party. But we can play tennis together. So my point being is like you just have to arrange where you want to put people and where you can meet people where they're at. Or you just go, I'm done. I don't want to talk to this person anymore. And you just say, you don't have to do a goodbye, but you just go, I'm not gonna respond right away. It's gonna take me 3 days to respond. And they get the message in that way as well.
Let's talk a little bit about mentors. So, how important is mentorship in your business?
Huge, huge. I think mentorship is one of the biggest things for anyone. The reason I say that is because perspective is everything. Once we're in touch with real reality, it makes a massive difference for us. The problem is, most of us can't compound experiences fast enough to get to that point of real reality. So we have to have people in our life that can be mentors. And the coolest thing about today is that we have virtual mentors. Like, John, you're probably a mentor to so many people virtually through the podcast and then just through your business endeavors. You might be a business mentor to people you've never met before because they can find you, which is an incredible experience.
No, it's so true. It's so true. So let's talk about something else. How about habits? And here's my question on that, Jordan. What habits should people establish to become successful?
I think it starts, if we're going to go with it in the right way, I think it starts with going to bed. So if you can go to bed at the same time every single day, that's a win. If that time is also before 10 p.m., that's an even bigger win. Because going to bed at 10 o'clock, what that leads to is usually you get 8 hours of sleep. So you'll end up getting up early in the morning. You also won't run into any problems. Most problems happen outside past 10 o'clock at night. So it's like you eliminate 95% of your challenges. You're home by 10, you're asleep in bed. And I think if you can be in bed at 10 o'clock every single night, that habit is far and away the best habit because it sets you up for the next morning. If you're going to wake up early, you're probably going to work out, go for a walk, be active, do something, but it keeps you in this positive spirit, which I think a lot of us, the nighttime is, some people are night owls, but I really think if you can get to that 10 p.m. bedtime, it'll make a world of difference.
Yeah, and of course you study circadian rhythms, right? And you made a great point, right? Circadian rhythms are the earlier the bed, the earlier you get up, but your body is designed that way. You look at
Yeah.
some of the ancient wisdom of the Ayurvedic cultures in India. It's yeah, go to bed early. And before lights were invented or the internet, people went to bed early because you were reading by candlelight. We can only do that for so long. You went to bed and you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, started working. Along those
Yeah.
lines, I love what you said there because sleep is so important. And so, of course, is getting up. But do you find as an entrepreneur, because I've always termed this the entrepreneur's mind, for some reason, about 90 minutes before the first break of daylight is when all of a sudden I start to toss and turn a little bit. I start thinking, who am I interviewing today? Who do I have appointments with my regular business? Who do I have appointments with in my other business? What time am I going to go to the gym? What else do I have to do today? It's like that brain starts going. And I've talked to other entrepreneurs, including my father-in-law, who's been an entrepreneur his whole life. Same thing. Yeah, 4:30, you start doing a little wrestling, and the wife's giving you the elbow and the ribs if you're a guy, or vice versa, maybe. But do you find that that brain starts to wake up before our body does?
Oh, yeah. You can't not. It's really challenging, especially when so there's parameters, right? So there's certain, so in life, we were assigned, if you're an employee, you have these roles, do this from to this time. But if you're an entrepreneur, it's like free reign, anytime, any day, whatever you want to do it. And that can be a very good thing or a bad thing. And it's when we're in control of that where you start to realize, yes, you want to think through the day. Yes, you want to be on top of your stuff. But it's really, it was interesting. I was talking to my coaching group this morning and we were talking about past, present, future. Where do we spend the most time? And everybody in the group said, I focus on the future. Why? Because focusing on the future leads to two things. It leads to one, anxiety, or it leads to inspiration. Most entrepreneurs, I would say, lead toward that inspiration component where it's like, what if this could be? What if we have the most incredible podcast ever? What if this amazing thing happens? Because you're right, a lot of people are just future focused. So for me, I try to get as present as possible. And the way I've done that is yes, the brain wakes up, yes, but I've tried to limit myself. So I actually have on my phone, I have all of these parameters where my phone's basically down, if per se. Like I have to click unlock the app and I try to keep it all down until 7 o'clock. It doesn't always happen because I start looking at my phone. But when you start looking at all your emails and taking those in, then you start to see, oh my God, I have so much stuff to do. And that's when you start having those feelings. So my thing is if you could delay those feelings a little bit and really focus on what makes you present, I think that will help you a little bit.
So along those lines, okay, so we're talking about good habits to start. And what about habits to break?
Habits, I would say anything where you feel that you are in, the item is in control of you. So what I mean by that might be a habit of complaining, that might be a habit of nicotine, that might be a habit of drinking, that might be a habit of like men or women. There might be many different habits. I think it's the habits that feel they have a control on you. If you don't feel it has a control on you, then it's okay. I think you're in a good place. But when you start to realize like, hey, I'm not in control of my own thoughts, I got to adjust this habit, then those are the ones where you really got to start focusing and breaking those habits. Because I think in this society, there's so much dopamine. It's so easy to get this rush of, I'm the best. This is amazing. Life's going great. But it never gets higher than a 6 or a 7. And to really get that 9 or 10, you got to like put a lot of this other stuff away.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this question. Let me give you a little context of it. Okay. How to change the obvious. Now here's what I mean by that. When I was living up in Cornwall, Ontario, there was a gym that I really enjoyed going to. Great gym, my kind of gym, like
Yeah.
powerlifting, boxers. The guy had everything, right? But it was a big
Yeah.
warehouse, is what it was. Well, it wasn't a beautiful Lifetime Fitness type of gym, and it was a hardcore gym, and I loved
I
it.
love that.
And my son loved it. We loved training there, and Tom, the owner, is a great guy. But he said to me one morning, he said, do me a favor. He goes, you do a lot of business consulting and all of that, don't you? I go, yeah. He goes, so yeah, he read my books and everything. I said, yeah, I do. He goes, do me a favor. I want you to come in here tomorrow and tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm like, Tom, your gym is packed in a small town. You are the dominant gym. There's a couple other small gyms, but you're the place to train in this town. I go, but having said that, yeah, I see some things that I would do different if I were you.
Yeah.
Went home, and then the next morning I came in and I made a short list. I mean, only a handful of things. Some things were like locker room driven, just a locker room. Like some of the lockers hadn't been cleaned in years, literally.
Yeah.
Like just rust and stuff you could fix. Come in with a power sander, clean them up, right? Just so people feel more comfortable putting their wallet and their cell phone in there, for example. Stuff like that. But anyway, I came in and I made some suggestions. But what I mean by that question, Jordan, is in Tom's case, he was there 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So he couldn't see the obvious. That me walking in from outside that said, gee, paint's green over there, but if you put up, a banner, let's say, for the Montreal Canadiens, yeah, it's a big hockey area,
Yeah.
or the team my son was playing for, okay, for example, because there's a lot of local interest in that team. If you did that, as opposed to just having a green wall, it might look better. So
Yeah.
to you, because you do a lot of business consulting, when you
Yeah.
go into another person's business and they say, Jordan, don't blow smoke up my skirt about what I'm doing right. Tell me what I need to improve. How do you do that? And how do you do it with decorum so you don't get the person mad at you?
Yeah, yeah. I think so. The first way to do that is you want to obviously that business owner felt that he had rapport with you. You know what I mean? Otherwise, he wouldn't ask. So the key is whenever you're giving first of all, whenever I give feedback to anyone, I always go, I would get for the example, I'd be like, John, is it okay to give you a little feedback? They'll say yes or no. If they say no, you hold it. Because here's the thing, people don't want unsolicited advice.
Yeah, true.
So you got to get there with them. And then the obvious things that a lot of stuff's going on. Yes, there's obviously big box business, there's other ways. I think the biggest thing right now that's being missed is really leadership, is people understanding what each individual is there for. People don't realize that everyone has a ton of options. And they might not feel like they have options, but we're in the internet age. We're on the phone, we're doing these things. So your front desk receptionist might be able to make more money doing something else. But instead, they really enjoy the gym. Why do they enjoy the gym? And I start to realize that with a lot of the clients is that they need to connect with their people better because they're in there going, oh, my customers are my first people. Yes, the clients are important for sure, but the employees are way more important because without the employees, you don't build the business. So it comes down to these obvious things of real leadership. No one's ever really taught it.
Mm.
So it can be very challenging for us. And that's why, especially when it's a top producer and they end up having to like they start managing other people because they're the top producer and they want them to step up the ladder, but they don't really know how to manage people. And they sit there and go, why are you not as good as me? And I'm like, maybe you're not as good of a manager as to them. Like maybe you haven't set up the opportunities for them. And he's, why would I give that away? And I'm like, that's the challenge. The challenge is that you work so hard for something and now you have to give it away so that it can grow even bigger. And I see that all the time with people.
You just made a great point. I often thought Wayne Gretzky, Magic Johnson, Ted Williams, probably the best, arguably, in their respective sport. None of them were successful coaches, right? Guys that, Pat Riley was a backup player with the Lakers. He was good, but why was he such a great coach? He understood coaching was different than play. Right?
Yeah.
To your point, something a great salesperson just does automatically because they're a great salesperson and they go, why can't you sell 5 of these a day? You schmuck. Yeah, what's wrong with you? I'm talking to little New Jersey here. But you know what I'm saying? So to that point, because you said a great thing there, how do we get when we're hiring people to manage salespeople to be effective so that they understand that managing is different than selling?
Yeah. I would, if I was in that situation, I would give them challenges. So I would test. This is the same idea as do something small. So what I've seen a lot of people do is usually they'll hire somebody and then that's the decision is made, right? They might do more interviews, but then they hire someone. I would do it more on like an interim basis where, hey, we'll do a 3-month trial period where you'll work 10 hours a week and we just see how it works. Because then you actually get a real feel of how they are. Because the first interview, everyone's dressed up. It's like a first date. When you go out on a first date, it's, oh, I got my best outfit on, got my nice watch, I got my nice shoes. And then you go to the car and the car's just a mess. And it's like, why didn't you show me that your car's a mess? Because people want to show their best face. The more time you work with people, the better understanding you have for them. So if you're able to integrate them in different ways and have them do trial projects, that's why a lot of people make in interviews, they have to do longer term interviews because they want to get to understand people and how they show up. But I think it's that. It's also talking to references, and it's just really understanding, is someone a true leader or not? And that leadership capability comes from, hey, when they come in the door, do they hold the door for the person behind them? These are very unaccounted things. Do they say hi to the janitor? Are they kind to the people who they're speaking with? Are they present? These are the little things that you can't always catch when you're sitting down at the interview. You got to see them along the way, see how they act.
You made another great point. Zig Ziglar's wife used to get her hair done next door to the gym I used to train at when I first moved to Dallas 28.
Oh, wow.
And we would watch Zig on a Saturday morning walk around. He used to call his wife the redhead. And he would walk around to the side of the car, open the door, take her by the elbow, walk her into the hair salon, and then he'd leave to go get his coffee. And we grabbed him one day actually and said, "Hey Zig, we got coffee here if you'll come talk to us." And we spent a couple of hours with Zig Ziglar, which we don't have time to get to right now. Amazing experience. But to your point, that he was the same guy when the cameras weren't rolling and there weren't 10,000 people in the audience, and how he treated his wife. And sometimes you do learn, because on an interview, somebody can fake you out there, this wonderful, kind person. And then you watch him go to a restaurant and tip somebody 50 cents. And you're like, I don't want you in my organization. You're not a quality person, right? Because you're a quality person to me, but you're faking with me. But with everybody else, here's who you really are. And that's what the public's going to see. So how do you see all that stuff? But along those lines, okay, let's stay on that for a second. Because how do you get the right people in an organization? In to quote Jim Collins, right, in Built to Great and Built to Last, how do you get the right people in the right seats on the bus and get the people who are in the wrong seat either in another seat that might fit them better or out of the organization?
So that's a very challenging one because building a team is the hardest thing to do. I have a mentor of mine. I know many hockey owners and they have unlimited money and still can't build a winning team. So I want to preface it with that it's very hard to build a team. Secondly, you have to start taking inventory on what people are good at and what they're actually interested in. So you might put them in a certain place, and this is why people are always trying out different things. They're trying out new skills because we're not always it's funny. I talk to some people and they're like, "Oh, I loved my last job." I'm like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "I've had 2 jobs. This is my favorite job. I want another job just like the one I had." And I'm like, "What'd you love about it?" And the thing is that a lot of us don't analyze what these roles and systems are to actually make things work. So when you're actually building a team, we like to think that the player's unique, but I had Stephen Montgomery, he runs this thing called Resi Brands, where they have a bunch of they run different blue collar franchise opportunities. And his answer to this, because we were having this conversation, he was talking about the fact that he's like, what you want to do is you want to create roles, right? So you got a quarterback, you got a football player, you got a lineman, you got a defensive player. So you start to understand that the lineman's probably got to be bigger than the quarterback, right? So that means that you have to have these intangibles. Like when you think of a salesperson or a marketing person or an operations person, you got to look for the skills and the tells of what those people entail, because it's not going to be so black and white. And then you also have to understand what their end goal is. So I would go around your organization and say, "Hey, 5 years from now, what do you actually want to be doing?" And if they say, "I want to make this much money," okay, maybe we move you to sales if you're in operations. If in 5 years they're like, "I'm very content with what I'm doing," okay, we're going to keep you in this ops area. We're going to keep you in these controls. Or I want to run systems, or I want to do this. For example, my wife, she does sales for a company. And they were like, it's Tampa, so there's a lot of bugs and everything. So there were actually flies. They like fly around the house. And she created this system. and the system ended up catching the flies. And she was so enamored with the system yesterday. I go, do you realize that's just like running ads? Like if you ran Facebook ads or something, if they work or they don't work. And she's like, Jordan, I loved it. I love testing. So the way I like to do this with people is one, always have people try new things. No one should be sitting in the same place. Two is we should constantly be looking at what people's skill sets are and where they might fit. And that's why if you have an employee, maybe they've been in a role for 6 months and you're like, I don't know, it's not working. Try switching them.
Mm,
Try giving people different opportunities before you're like, get out of here. Because if they know the system and they're in the system, it helps exponentially when they learn a new process.
exactly. I used an example with somebody yesterday. We had a guy in customer service at one time
Yeah.
with our network marketing business who was great. People loved him. Really nice guy. And then all of a sudden they switch him to events. We could have hired somebody over the internet to work in
Yeah.
events, put him in the wrong place, and then the company let him go.
No.
This guy was so good at month end, he would
Yeah.
call me and tell me what I needed to do. He knew my organization that well. He'd say, John, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. The guy was so good and so effective.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they put him in the wrong place. He did a decent job. He didn't do a bad job, but for whatever reason, he had a falling out with somebody. And I'm like, we lost a valuable person in customer service.
Yeah.
And we lost the guy. Either he quit or they let him go. I don't know all the circumstances. But I'm thinking of that as an example of many that I've seen. I'll give you another one. When I was young, 100 years ago, but not that long, about 40 years ago, I worked for MetLife in New York. And
Okay.
I went to a sales meeting and about 1,000 sales reps there. And a guy named Bob Crimmins was running sales at the time for MetLife in that region, a very big region for Met. You're a Jersey guy, MetLife's.
Of course. Yeah.
Anyway, he starts to talk and he says, when I'm on the phone and I'm reading a report, like I multitask, he says, but when the top sales rep at MetLife at that time was a Persian gentleman with a very funny name to us in America, Mehdi Fakazadi. Mehdi, very common name in Iran. But anyway, Mehdi was Iranian American, and he was the top sales rep. And I'll never forget this guy. And I'm like 23, 24 years old. He says, when Mehdi calls, I stop reading the reports and I listen to what he has to say because he's too busy to call me to talk about the weather. If he calls me, there's either one, a problem, or two, an opportunity.
Yeah.
And I also understand that if Mehdi stops selling, I don't have a job. And like 40 years later, you remember some of these things, right? But I'd love your thoughts on that because to me, that was the ultimate sales manager. That guy knew his business. He was a sales manager because he understood if that guy stopped working, he better go find another line of work himself. How do we get that philosophy into people's heads that the people selling are the most important people in the organization and the rest are to support sales, not compete with sales?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that manager had the perfect philosophy because you want people, the way I've seen it best is when people are incentivized on the same trail. So what I mean by that is like you have so many different industries, but usually there's a salesperson, you have some operations people that are supporting that salesperson, and then like fulfilling the work. But as you get more and more sales, if you can give the operations people that little piece of commission, that little bonus, that little incentivization, because then it allows people to work better as a team together. Because essentially the goal is to have everyone fully aligned on what said mission is. Most of the time, said mission is to sell a great product and then deliver a great product. Usually we like to focus on the sales part because it grows the business. But that delivery mechanism, you need to have the right people there, and you have to people that want to be there to support. So if you can get them incentivized on that, understanding that, hey, these people feed us, but we're also executing here, and we have the majority of the time, it's much easier to see this when it's a commission only opportunity or a very small company, like a smaller company. But when you get into some of these bigger companies, people get so lost. They're like, I don't even know what half the people here do, which is why being lean is so good. But when you get in some of these big companies, you're like, I don't even know. Half the people don't even correlate to it at all.
We're not even sure why they're here. So let's stay along that lineup because management's so important. So, what three things would you tell somebody who is starting a business how to get it started, how to scale it, and then how to manage it properly?
Yeah, so to get it started, the key is to get the first dollar.
Yeah.
Like I say to people, like you don't even have a business unless you got the first dollar. So the first thing you're going to want to do is sales. You're going to want to start selling whatever that product is, whatever you're trying to do. Then you're going to make iterations along the way, make ways to improve it, and then you're going to want to create systems. So at first, the way this made the most sense to me is that there's three roles in a company. There's an employee, a manager, and an owner. At the beginning, you wear the every single, and then inside of that, there's also subgroups. They talk about this a lot in the E-Myth and and then in the book Traction, where basically there's the accounting department, there's the sales department, there's the marketing, there's the fulfillment, there's operations, and you start to see all this, and you start to realize that hey, I am a one-man band, and I am carrying every single hat. So the way I think about it is when you're in the beginning, you're switching hats constantly. As the organization starts to grow and you start to get some traction by making sales, then it will grow. Then you can start to outsource people to those different roles that you're struggling with. So maybe you have someone in your accounting department, maybe you have someone in sales, maybe someone in marketing, maybe someone even in the operations part, and maybe you handle the marketing. And you start to build a team where things automatically start to work. Now, the thing is that there's going to be many errors along the way, many iterations, but you want to test small and on the things that work, start testing bigger. Because I think that makes a world of difference for those who can actually get real movement in their businesses. And then once you get to a great scale, then you have to start hiring managers to manage all those people because you move from the employee to the manager role. And then eventually you'll be promoted to the owner role, which you had the entire time, but you actually spend that time in there where you're actually vision casting and looking at the future where the manager manages the employee, making sure they're working. The employee is the one actually doing the work. And when you think about it in this framework, you start to realize, wait, I actually have 20 jobs and I'm not that good at any of them. So, how do I get people to come in and help me? And the biggest tip I've heard is if you can get someone to do 80% of the work for you, it's probably a good move. And we start to realize, even with AI and everything going on, there's ways to outsource a lot of that employee work. But I'm telling you, we're all going to have to be managers because you always have to look at the work and see if it's being done correctly or have somebody that you trust looking at it. Because even with a lot of these AI systems, you have to make sure that they're doing the things correctly. So it's just really important for us to understand the employee role, the manager role, and the owner role. And as you're moving the way through that, you might have a day where you go into 15 different roles, and that's okay. But you just have to realize where you're at along the way. And I think as you get further along in your journey, you start hiring for those different positions, and that allows you to grow bigger and bigger.
Great answer. So, so you mentioned AI. How much are you using AI and or other technologies in your business?
I'm using it a good amount. For me, I usually use like some easy ones for anyone is on Zoom. There's something called Fathom AI, and Fathom is literally a note taker that will take the entire meeting, take the notes, and utilize all that because I do a lot of podcasts, so it helps me with my note taking. I also use a lot of ChatGPT to work through different ideas and thoughts. Also, at this point, which is quite interesting, you can there's this other one called Meet Albert, I believe it's called. And basically it does LinkedIn automation outreach. So for you literally set the parameters of the community, you set how they reach out to people, and then you have them reach out. And then if they respond, you look at the messages. But it does that first level employee nature for you and saves you hours instead of you sitting there doing it all yourself. And then the other big one is with a lot of the content, like there's the content side of it. I have different there it's called video.ai, but it's switched. And what I'm doing with that is I don't do it anymore, but someone on my team will drop the clips in from our podcast. It'll make 10 to 15, 20 different clips for us. And then you can schedule these to all your different platforms. So it allows you to be active at all moments, without you having to be active at all moments. So
Wow.
there's a lot of cool stuff going on, especially to replace that employee role. The AI is not going to think for you. It can think of everything, but you have to guide the thinking. So I've really been working on how do I utilize this for myself? How do I think about things? How do I eliminate tasks? And how do I just save time and become more efficient?
That's what I use an example when I was living up in Stony Point, New York, when you know where that is in Rockland
Of
County.
course.
And I used to cut my own lawn. And my mentor at the time, this is many years ago, and he said, "Why are you cutting your own lawn? You can hire a guy to do that." I said, "Yeah, I know I can, but I enjoy it. I like being outside and doing it on
The
like Saturday
pride.
afternoons. I'm traveling all week. It gives me an idea to be outside, be in nature." He said, "There's a lot of other ways you can do that." He said, "What do you think you make per day?" And at the time, I was making, I don't know, $1,000 a day. So he said, "Okay,
Okay.
let's give 8 hours sleep, 8 hours for recreation, everything else, 8 hours for work. That means you're making $125 an hour roughly." And I said, "Yeah, that's about right, give or take. I think that's the right calculation." And anyway, I said, "You make an interesting point because I can hire a guy to cut my lawn for $30 an hour, let's say.
Yeah.
So if I'm making 125 and I can pay a guy 30, the difference is mine. And in that hour, could I find another prospect? Could I make another sale? Could I do another conference call? Could I do something that was a business building, revenue generating activity versus cutting my lawn, even though I enjoyed it?" So I eventually did hire a landscaper. And I thought that was just such a great point. And you just made the same point. To me, that's how I see AI is let it do all the work you don't want to, don't care to do, that you normally have to pay other people to do. Let it do all that. And you do what you're unique in doing. You do what you're best at, thinking through your business, being the visionary, being the planner, being the negotiator, the communicator of your business. You do what you do best that you can't have that robot do. That's how I see it. And that's how we're using it. Nowhere to the extent you're using it. We're just using it really for podcasting and doing a lot of writing for us, frankly, as well.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, and then the other incredible thing is like the hosting platform. Who do you do the hosting platform on for your podcast?
Right now, everything we just use is YouTube.
Okay, yeah. So I have Buzzsprout, so it brings the RSS feed and then puts it onto like shop. What is it? Apple Podcasts, Spotify. They have a feature for $20 a month where it literally writes the entire description for me,
That's
and
right.
then it makes a blog post. And I'm like, dude, this is of course I'm in. Like, twist my arm. This is easy
I
because
mean,
you start.
we're
What?
we're using some technology. Opus clips we're using for the shorts.
Same
Uh,
thing, yeah.
we're using. I forget. My wife and my daughter are actually doing it all. Like they say,
Yeah.
I'm the talent. I said I would tongue in cheek, big time. I'm the talent. I'm the looks. God forbid. But yeah, I'm the talker in the family. So I'm doing well to that point. I'm doing what I do best. They're doing what they do best.
You have to, but the thing is, you have to outsource, like, you have to figure out a way to do all this because you could get bogged down with everything going on. It's insane.
Oh yeah.
There's too many things, there's too many stuff, and it's hard to be on top of a lot of this stuff. So, even people nowadays, there's even AI groups that people are paying to memberships to be a part of. Why? They outsource the looking for different AI systems.
Yeah.
They come to the group and they just tell you, hey, this is the new AI system going on. And you just start to realize like everything, even the different ways you think. Like my men's group, like I have a Monday night group and a Thursday morning group. And the people are like, I'm like, at the end of every call, I'm like, what's the greatest benefit? And a lot of the people are like, Jordan, I zoomed out. I took a moment and I actually zoomed out of my day-to-day life. And I got to see I had these deep questions where I thought about my life and I started to realize, hey, am I spending the right amount of time? Am I allocating things on the right path? Am I doing things correctly? Because there's so much of us where we just want to so quickly be like, we got to do, but we don't think about, hey, is this even the right action at this moment in time?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Hey, tell us about your consulting business. How can you help some of our clients?
Yeah, so what we do is it all came up 6 years ago, and it all started with this vision where we start off with a 5 year vision. We want to see where we're going. And then we have five pillars, which are mental health, physical health, community service, philanthropy, spirituality, and relationships. Because when we feel that we're aligned with ourselves and we're aligned with our mission, then we're going to show up better in business. We're going to show up better for our family. We're going to show up better in all aspects of life. So what we do is we basically take inventory of where you're at today, what a 10 looks like, so you can figure out the disparities and what actually winning looks like for you. And then we come up with goals that you want to work towards that build into your 5-year vision. So we have accountability, and then we have weekly groups. And inside of the groups, you get all these different perspectives because everybody's in a different field, right? So you have some people that are in the same field, but a lot of people are doing different fields, different experiences, different walks of life. And then from the podcast, from time to time, I bring in speakers to speak to some of the groups. So it becomes a super interactive way where it's constantly learning. And then I also do one-on-one work with people if they really want to dive in deep and work towards their real goals and be held accountable on a weekly cadence. So it's become something that I get a ton of joy out of. The clients love it because they're actually taking a moment for themselves instead of constantly, what do you want me to do next? And a lot of the groups where people don't really know each other that well, so they become friends and family inside of it, but they don't know each other that well. So you can be authentic. There's no judgment. And inside of these groups, you can sit there and go, hey, I made a big deal today. And sometimes you don't feel you can share that, or sometimes it's, I hate my boss. Like sometimes you can't share that. So it's a very open, because there's no repercussions. You're going to a group where everyone's just invested in the fact that, hey, you want to show up and you want to get better, and we appreciate that. So we want to see if we can support that in any way.
Great, great. Tell us about
Podcast, crazy. Have you ever heard of 75 Hard?
Oh yeah, I've done it. Yep.
I love it.
Love it. Love it.
So I did it in 2020, and it was like the second weekend or third weekend, and I was doing it with a buddy of mine, Franz, and we ended up going from Tampa to Naples Airport because it was Saturday. We're like, I don't know what to do, because usually we would go out and hang out with everyone, but I'm like, we got to be like, not, it's 2 workouts, no drinking, all this stuff. So we're like, let's just remove ourselves. It'd be the best way. So we drive all the way to Naples. It's like 2 hours. They had an airplane show. We go and we start walking around and we start like looking at people, seeing what's going on. And we see that there's a World War II museum. And I'm like, that's quite interesting. And the guy comes out and he goes, hey, you should start reading about this guy. So I start reading. His name was Wayne Ogden Smith. And he ended up being a prisoner of war for 7 years in Vietnam. He ended up creating incredible business afterwards. And I was like, hey, this guy sounds really cool. And he does this old man giggle where he's like, I'm Wayne Ogden Smith. And I go, if you're Wayne Ogden Smith, I have a podcast. And I just said, I have a podcast. Let's record. We recorded for 10 minutes. And then he's doing, I really got to get back to work. So we went to his house the next weekend, just passed around a cell phone. That's how archaic this was. I went to this man's house and I brought a cell phone. Or like we had the big Zoom thing. Like we didn't even really record. I didn't know what to do. I was just like, let's just pass the phone around and it does its thing. You tell your story and just story time. And I mean, it's transformed so much from there, but COVID really opened up the door for me to be like, hey, I can get large people on this podcast. And I ended up having founder of Reebok on. I had billionaire Jeff Hoffman. I had restaurateurs, millionaires, athletes, Ron Jaworski, like all these incredible people. But it really comes down, for me, it's building these incredible connections with all of these people. It's a force of networking thing. Yeah. Most people don't like networking calls because they're, hey, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? And if you invite someone on the podcast, it's go share your story. Yeah. Go do your thing. People let their guard down. And then at the end of a podcast, it is free game to be like, hey, what's going on? Can we work together somehow? Because people feel the rapport and they want to be like, I really like you. Like, I feel like I owe you a favor kind of thing. So I've been a huge fan of the podcast. I've been doing it. We're up to 230 plus episodes. We're doing like 2 or 3 a week. I'm trying a mini series now, because I've seen that where it's like a 3-minute episode, see how they work out. But yeah, it's really fun. I'm on YouTube. I've been doing that for a bit, and I just think there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Great. And how do people reach you if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, they can honestly shoot me. I'm on Instagram. I think it's Jordan F. Edwards. And then if you want to shoot me an email, it's jordan@edwards.consulting. I'm always watching that. I'm always watching the Instagram where it's Jordan F. Edwards, and you can just shoot me a DM. So look forward to connecting. And what I'll offer everyone is we could do a complimentary coaching call if you come from John's podcast. Let's do it.
Great. Hey, people, take him up on that. This young man is already someplace, but he's going some major places and dealing with major people. Take him up on that. And any last words of advice?
Don't compare yourself to others. Focus on yourself, and it'll all work out.
Great. Thank you so much, Jordan. You've been a great guest and an inspiration, and I look forward to working together in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.